G'day, Michael Klim here, ex-Olympian, entrepreneur, if you want to call that. I'm here with Danny for the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Kennedy, and I'm here to help you become the very best version of yourself.
MK, welcome back to the show, brother. It's
Thanks,
been a
mate.
bloody long time since we've got a chance to catch up in person,
Exactly.
and even longer since you've been on the show. So,
Yeah.
welcome back, man.
Thanks, mate. It's great to be here, and congratulations on the podcast.
Thanks, mate.
You know, you've come a long way since the
buddy,
first one.
Yeah, we were just discussing some of the progressions of the podcast over the last, since 2016. I think the first one we ever did was in the car with the USB mic on the console and had to both lean in when it was our time to have a talk, which is good. And then we've had a few Zoom ones and it's been all over the place. But no, it's good to catch up, mate. It's been bloody ages.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, no, look, it's been since 2016, obviously. You know, we've been through COVID and getting back to normality. And, you know, for me, it's been life-changing the last 6 years. So, obviously, you know, getting sick, but then also, you know, almost changing career paths as well. And just finding a kind of a new direction in my life, really. So, definitely a very interesting period.
Let's talk through that. So, obviously, you've been going through some physical challenges over the past couple of years. Most people who have had anything to do with you in the past, or even since I saw you last, usually flat out pumping some iron or getting some swims in, some runs and whatnot. And even we were talking about on the way up before when we did the sled challenge, 24-hour sled push, bloody hell. But talk us through the physical challenges you've had over the last few years, and I guess how it all come about and how it's progressed.
Yeah. So to the listeners, I was diagnosed with CIDP, which is chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. Basically, it's a mouthful. Try and say that after a few beers. So it's it's similar to GBS, which is it's an autoimmune disorder where you're predominantly, it starts at your feet or your hands, and the nerves, the lining of the nerves begin to frail, which results in the signal not being sent properly. So generally you lose functionality, mobility, sensation. So it also has an autonomic impact as well. So heat regulation and sensation and all those sort of things. So for me, I was carrying a lot of injuries most of the time. I was always, even after swimming, I had a really bad ankle that was putting off the fusion for many years, and just masking it with painkillers, and same with the prolapsed disc in between level L3 to 5, and I was putting off the surgeries, and I was getting really bad sciatica, and that at the same time I thought this is just the beginning of COVID. I thought, I was rehabbing my left ankle, but I noticed that I couldn't actually do a calf raise on my right side, which was supposedly my healthy side. And that muscle started sort of, fading away. And, that was the first indication that that something was wrong. And I started getting really weird sort of feelings in my legs, as if someone was pouring hot water down the inside of my leg and on my thigh, and tingling at night. And it was, and it's, we with the doctors, we decided we need to eliminate all the other ailments that you have, which for me was the ankle, which I had fused, and then I had a back operation. So once that was sorted, I was diagnosed with CIDP. So, and now I can, I'm I wouldn't say I'm all fixed, but I can just focus on one disorder before I had a bunch of things in the air, which it's been life-changing. As you mentioned, I was very active. For me, movement and sport and physical activity was gave me mental strength, gave me power, gave me connection with people, gave me everything. And literally all overnight, I think within the space of between January and May of 2020, I lost the ability to walk, unaided. So I had to either walk on crutches or have a walking stick, and I needed AFOs, braces for my feet. So it was demoralizing, and I was in denial for a very long time, and it's been challenging, but I can sort of elaborate on that period where we've had other challenges thrown in with COVID and trying to manage the rehab and the treatments, and then mentally as well. COVID was tough enough for most of us, and then having to deal with this disorder and living in Bali, trying to come back for 6 months at a time, being away from my kids, and mate, it was all happening. It was all happening.
From that first instance where you said you started to have like those weird sensations in either your hand, in the legs, and then you started to feel those that hot water sensation and whatnot. Like from the first part where you felt like you were losing muscle activation and whatnot to actual diagnosis, what was the length of that period?
It was a pretty long time actually, because we didn't know if it was contributed from my back, from the spinal issues, or if it was something separate, or was a combination of the two.
Yep.
So it probably took nearly 1.5 to 2 years to get a proper diagnosis. So, but I had nerve conduction studies, MRIs, anything you can have, all the different tests under the sun. But so it took a while, but we knew it could be one of the two or a combination. So, But that was probably another hard thing to deal with. Everything all my sporting injuries prior to that, like if you do a hammy, for example, you know exactly how many weeks you got out.
Straightforward diagnosis, yeah.
And then the rehab is pretty straightforward as well. You start with walking, jogging, etc. But whereas with this, it's so individual. Everyone, it attacks people in completely different ways. It's where the weakness is in your body. And for me, I was sort of running on empty and still pushing very hard in terms of business and physically, and my nervous system was shot. So obviously maybe that's where it went and affected all my nerves.
Having known you since I think probably around 2014, I think was the first time we met. Oh no, it's been ages, hasn't it? I can confidently say that you're like one of the most driven people I've ever met, but also such an incredible people person, and just someone who just thrives off the energy of, as you said,
absolutely,
activity and community and whatnot. How hard was it in terms of the identity piece where, you kind of come to the realization that, you're losing their function? Obviously, a lot of the activities that you've done previously are going to be probably out of the picture now, or at least having to change a lot. You mentioned how it was quite difficult mentally. How is that coming to the acceptance or the realization that, life's going to change quite a bit in terms of your regular activities and the capabilities?
It's the hardest part. I think I was in denial for a very long time. I started withdrawing from, a lot of circle of friends, because a lot of them were based around fitness, and I used to go and do my workout buddies in Bali. I'd sort of, I started working out at home where I didn't have to talk to anyone and give them explanations, etc. So started withdrawing from my usual, connections with people, which was probably a big no-no. I lost a lot of motivation as well. I think COVID was a great excuse not to do anything. I think a lot of the tools and, the things that I used to, govern my life by, I kind of, let go. I didn't sort of look after my health, my diet. I sort of almost gave up the fact that this has happened to me, and I was bitter, I was angry. And this was this sort of the grieving period. And it was very difficult, like even for me to go out for dinner or go, I always needed to lean on one of the kids or have a walking stick, and at that time I hadn't publicly announced it, so there was always a billion questions and I'd have to answer those. So I think there was a time where it just became too much, and I didn't, like I said, I think I should have done much better in terms of my nutrition and looking after myself, which, I think the penny dropped when both my family and my partner said, look, if you don't look after yourself, you probably end up in a wheelchair, because you're not doing the things that you're renowned for and the things that made you who you were. You're not doing any of them. So and I made a lot of lifestyle changes, and got back into being around people and coaching, and learned to swim, and working with Swimming Victoria in schools, and suddenly made some really positive lifestyle changes in terms of nutrition. So trying to getting rid of gluten and being carnivore focused mainly, and getting back into my meditation, the hot and colds, the things that they used to be bread and butter for me, but I just dropped them, but it was amazing how quickly that change in mentality happened for me. Once you start, it's much easier, as you
build that momentum.
Yeah. I mean, we've always preached, once you do get that first week underway, the second, third, it's just flows. So, looking back at it now, it's been over a year that I've had a really good sort of positive sort of momentum shift. So it's been good.
How would you compare the challenge that you've got at the moment mentally in comparison to, I know you can't even really compare the two, but how would you compare the challenge you're going through now in comparison to something like going through training and putting yourself, being super disciplined and motivated and carrying this momentum into, let's say, an Olympic meet? Is it difficult because there's no kind of like end goal that you're focusing towards? Like, what are the things you're kind of focusing on in order to keep that consistency and the momentum going along?
Yeah, look, there's certainly similarities in the sense that let's control the controllables, the things that I can control. I can control what I put in my mouth. I can control, my sleep. I can control, the things that I know I can do, that I have to do to feel better and control. I can do my mobility.
Yeah.
So that in terms of that, all those sort of my lifestyle things that I can control, it's very similar. So, and I'm very fortunate that I do have those tools from my sporting career. But there is, like you said, there's no end goal. I mean, obviously the end goal for me in a perfect world will be complete remission and, getting most of my functionality back. But there is no known cure for, a lot of these CIDP disorders. So, I'm trying to sort of measure myself on, let's say, where I was 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago. So if I'm progressing or staying stable, which is still a good result for me. So it is frustrating because previously my sporting career was all about, it was about time frames and, time out
specific
of the water.
goal-driven stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So you break it down to the things that, I'd want to get back in the pool. And so I've had to almost change my psychology, where I used to go as hard as I could and say in the gym and stuff, we'd just smash ourselves, and that would give me the the endorphin rush and the dopamine hit that I wanted. But whereas now I sort of I've realized it's more about sustainability and the things that make me feel better mentally and the things that are good for my body. And I very quickly, if I push myself too hard, if I do too much in one day, I could feel it. And, I'm sort of bedridden for a couple of days after that.
From the exercise perspective, what type of things are you doing at the moment, or are you able to do?
Yeah, it's not ironic, but water is my friend,
Water is, who would have thought?
It's, exactly, thank God. But so swimming and hydrotherapy is one of my staples, but I'm still obviously activating these muscles that are being compromised. I don't really do any upper body exercises anymore. It's predominantly and I haven't lost anything on that. So that's just purely from swimming, and so just activation and stimulation for my legs. So anything from a lot of Pilates to core exercises and just hypertrophy basics, sort of leg extension, hamstring curls, balancing exercises. I can't stand on one leg. I struggle to stand on two. So just really basic stuff. But I try and move every day. I've got a salt bike at home, so minimum that I do would be half an hour a day on the assault bike, and then add some stuff in the gym as well.
You mentioned with the nutrition, you were predominantly pushing towards protein and fats, was it? More carnivore type diet. Is increase in protein of any benefit? Like, considering it's a neural, like a autoimmune type thing. Is keeping protein higher of any benefit in that regard to retaining parts of muscle mass and stuff?
I've definitely found that it has been. I've done some other kind of hormone replacement treatments that have helped me as well. but it's amazing how powerful these diseases are, that you can be doing everything right with nutrition, on all the right supplements, but the overriding, your brain is so powerful that it can still, obviously take over. But I feel that even overall, and just carrying excess fluids and stuff, the high protein, high fat, it's been really good for me. So
right. With the treatments and stuff that you come to Sydney for, what's the treatment involved?
So the treatment's called IVIG, which is a product called Intragram. It's basically from blood donors. So it's an extract, a compound that is created, and it's used widely across not just autoimmune disorders, but it helps to regenerate nerve fibers. So I do that every 6 weeks, and I do fairly high doses, because generally you do it every 3, but because I'm based in Bali, it's logistically a little bit easier to do it every 6. And I just found that I'm really in a plateau sort of stage at the moment, and I've got a bunch of tests coming up just to see if we can experiment with other treatments and see if we can get this, tilt the scales to towards getting better and healing, rather than just staying where I am. So there's a bunch of immune suppressant drugs. There is steroids, which I've tried and didn't really work. There is plasma replacement. There is stem cell replacement therapy as well, which is quite common. So there's a bunch of things that I still have to try to see if I can get there.
I'd imagine for someone who got diagnosed with the same thing that may not be like in, let's say, a good financial position when it comes up, these treatments wouldn't be, I'd imagine they wouldn't be cheap. So is that kind of, I wanted to touch on the fact that you were saying before you're looking at starting this foundation. Is that kind of part of why you kind of did that, or more of an awareness type thing?
Well, the actual treatments, to be honest, all this IVIG and everything is actually subsidised by the government. So great. That is in the equivalent of me getting that treatment in Bali or Indonesia is about $12,000 a sitting. So it's very expensive. So we're very fortunate for the blood bank and the RPA, the hospital there, and here I've done my treatments at Cabrini, but it's actually the other things. It's the braces, for example, like this little brace that I've got on. It's over $1,000, and it lasts me 6 months only. And then flying, I think I'm pretty, compared to some other sufferers, there's a lot of over 30% of CIDP sufferers are in wheelchairs. So you need to adjust their home to having ramps and having equipment that makes their life, lifestyle much easier. So there is that, but I think not everyone has private health cover, so it does become costly, and it also affects our carers and our families, because a lot of the time, I'm very fortunate that Michelle, my partner's, she was literally just caring for me for the last 2 years and making sure that I was looked after, and same with my family. So there is definitely an element of, financial, but also like more of a resource point of view. So I've been touching on the foundation. I've been just inundated since the project story and my article recently in The Age, that there are so many sufferers out there that, one, they feel really alone. There's no community that can have a conversation about their symptoms, their mental health. Like it's a journey. Some people live with it. Like, I've been literally inundated with, a lot of the time it's their partners that reach out to me, and either husbands or wives, and say, my husband has had CIDP for 20 years, he tried this or that. So and everyone's different in terms of, there's no cookie cutter kind of treatment thing. So it's after that, it's after a few hundred messages, I've decided to create the foundation, one, to raise the awareness for this autoimmune disorder, but also others. Two, to kind of raise funds to be able to help some sufferers in, if they struggle financially to either get the right equipment or adjust their homes or even with just everyday life. I wasn't allowed to get NDIS, which is a shame because my lifestyle changed completely, and I was able to continue earning money, but it's certainly still diminished a lot from where it was before. So NDIS only goes a certain way, but and then the other, I guess, and then creating a portal or community through the foundation where sufferers can exchange stories and they feel they're not
more
alone.
Support.
And then the biggest thing that we'd love to get to eventually is starting trials on new medications and. In America, they're probably the leading country of any medical trials. They've got about 15 of them happening at the moment. Australia's only got one, and they don't happen very often. So ultimately, if we can raise enough funds, start our own medical trials here in Australia.
Yeah. You mentioned before the swimming side of things and how you're back in the pool and whatnot. You were saying before we hit record today that you're back into some coaching or doing plenty of coaching at the moment. So tell us a bit about what's going on in the swimming world and from the coaching perspective, and even the swimming events and stuff that are coming up. Yeah,
so towards October last year, I started, or the year before actually, I started Klim swim in Bali. So that was through COVID, we had a few complications with our swim schools here, and leases and instructors. The workforce was really hard to get, and so I decided with my obviously health issues to permanently be based in Bali. So we started the swim school, and it went really, really well initially, and I had a couple of national representatives for Indonesia, so I got to coach at a high level, but also got to coach some of the grassroots guys, and I really enjoyed it. And it was something, and the word kind of spread that I was there, and I'd get a bunch of swimmers that are either there on holidays or would come specifically to me for a couple of weeks, but also getting back into the sport. I'm working with Swimming Victoria on their Pathways program, which is all, kids from the age of 14 up to 18, and on the verge of making Olympics or national teams, etc. So it's an amazing pleasure, but it's also so exciting for me to get back and still be able to connect with these guys it's a different generation to when I was swimming and their approach. So doing some stuff with them, working with Furbank Grammar School as well, where they've got a really great swimming program, and trying to sort of implement some of my ethos in terms of developing the youth. That it's not just about swimming, it's about that personal development. Swimmers are very employable. They develop great habits, life skills, etc. I'm doing that, and as a sponsor back in the day, I was involved with the World Series Swims, which we had events all around Queensland mainly, but we also support the Portsea Swim Classic, Bondi to Bronte, the Cooley Classic, and now we're about to launch the biggest, it's called Swim the Gold Coast, which is you're swimming from Kira all the way to Surfers Paradise, which is as long.
How far is that?
That's 21k, mate. 21k. It's DK's favourite distance.
Oh no!
So
I remember. Quick story on this one. I remember. So I reckon the first year I met Klimmy, he got me to run his boot camp in the lead up to the St Kilda Mile. Yeah, you guys are sponsoring that. And I'm more of a land athlete, I think. I think I'm more of a land athlete. A bit like a rock in the water, I think. And so at the end of this boot camp, I had to do the St Kilda Mile. Yeah. So I did 3 practice swims, and all 3 of those were in the pool at MSAC, and I'd stop at each end. Underestimated how hard it was to swim 1.6k after not really swimming at all. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, after the first 300 meters in the ocean, I was ready to pull. I was looking for the boat. Looking for the boat, and then I actually end up swimming my best time because there was jellyfish, and I've never swum faster in my life.
We put them there on purpose,
Never swum faster in my life. So, that was brutal.
So look at that. That actually, your story exactly is what motivates me to run these events. So we've got weekend warriors that want to have a challenge. generally don't swim, or people that love ocean swimming and, just like ticking off events like fun runs, for example. But then we've got elite sections now in our swims, like in the Noosa Swim Festival, we've got, a 5K and a 10K where, we get Olympians like Nick Sloman and guys that have made the national team coming and competing for, in some great conditions. But also the marathon swim, which will be one of the biggest on the East Coast. They've got the Rottnest swim, which is probably the most famous swim in Australia. But I think very soon, I assume the Gold Coast will be the favourite, I reckon. So
unreal.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying being part of those events, and looking forward. And so that's kind of inadvertently I've ended up back in the sport, which has given me so much. You gravitate to the people that you
big focus
connect.
point again. Would you ever do you ever see yourself coaching like individual athletes, like at things like the Com Games or Olympic Games, like trying to get into that side of things?
Oh, absolutely. I think eventually, at the moment I've got a few athletes that are swimming at sort of Southeast Asian Games, so they're probably a level below Com Games, etc. But we've got a bunch of juniors that are, showing a lot of promise, and hopefully once our squads, not only at Furbank but in Bali build, when we'll get 1 or 2 finds in there. And
awesome.
So, but I've learned completely new skills being a coach. Patience, communication, all these different things that when you're in a driver's seat and as an athlete, you control everything yourself, and but you suddenly become a facilitator, and there's certain level of motivation you have to get out of the kids, and rather you can't do everything for them. You got to make them do most.
Lead them in the right direction. Yeah.
So, but still making it fun and enjoyable. So there's and different levels, and every athlete absorbs information differently.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So some need demonstrations, some need to read it written down on the board, and it's some look like they don't want to swim at all, but they're great at racing. For example. So so I've really enjoyed that challenge, and it's been a good journey.
I wanted to get your thoughts on obviously you introduced me to Brett Hawke. Who ended up working with Cody Simpson for a little while, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on how you think Cody's gone since he's getting back in the pool, and what level you think he can get to from kind of where he started back at.
Look, I think what Cody's been able to accomplish is phenomenal. He's actually, in all honesty, he's actually just surpassed my all-time best time in the 100 butterfly. So he's and having such a long time off, and then coming back into the sport, and I think even when we take a bit of time off in the gym or in the pool, it takes normally double the length of time to get back to to any sort of shape. But the fact that he's been able to integrate into the swimming kind of community so quickly. He's got the right mindset. He's, his attitude. He could have very easily sort of, felt like he was, special or different compared to others. But and I think it was great to have Brett Hawke as one of his initial coaches, because he sort of gave him the right perspective of what sport's all about. I think there was a few sessions where he was vomiting on the side of the pool and say, this is what it's all about, and I think now he thrives on that, and he thrives on those small incremental kind of improvements, and his mentality, and obviously, dating the greatest Olympian of all time and having that as your as your example in your everyday life, and Emma, I think it's also been a very interesting journey, and I've been fortunate enough to be in contact with him throughout that and helping him early on. I don't want to help him too much now because he's gonna get me out of the record books completely. But no, I'm joking. But he's been also a great thing for the sport, because as since probably the early 2000s, there haven't been too many sort of personalities and that have different stories or. So he's brought a different dimension to the sport.
Unreal, mate. Well, what's the plans? What's the plans of the rest of the week in Melbourne? What's
Well, look,
happening?
I'm on deck morning and afternoon, so I'll be doing
Yep.
that. Catching up with, it's good to get it for me while I'm in Australia. It's always good to get an overhaul on my physical condition. So I'll be getting, everything from my eyes to my nerve conduction studies, to getting physio. I'm actually going to my physio after this. So it's good just to, I'm sort of, now that I'm not withdrawn, I try and reconnect with all my friends and making sure they're okay, and just sort of really enjoying the journey. I'm sort of I've got three nephews that swim pretty competitively, and my son's here also in Melbourne. He's a keen tennis player, so where he spent the day at Kooyong yesterday, and so I'm sort of really enjoying not only watching my kids develop, but all the kids that I'm coaching develop as well. So it's been a good time. So thanks for having me on. And if you're ever in Bali, come to Klim Swim at Fins.
Definitely, and
take you for a sesh.
Definitely. Once you've got the foundation up and running, we'll make sure we push it out there too. But looking forward to sharing this, mate. It's been good to catch up, and
hopefully we'll.
Good to see you. It's looking really well, and obviously driven to raise some more awareness around it and stay on top of it.
Thanks, DK. Yeah, no, I think hopefully we can sit here in a few years' time and say we beat the condition, but what I think what you're doing, even by talking about it and sharing the message, and also the foundation, we're all doing the right thing for it. So I really appreciate it.
100%. For everyone who's tuned into the episode, thank you firstly, and secondly, if you've enjoyed the chat, if you got anything you want to mention to Klimmy or any feedback, we'd love for you to take a screenshot of the episode and share it on your Instagram story. Tag myself, tag MK. I'll have his socials and everything in the show notes below. But thanks for tuning in, and look forward to sharing the next one with you guys.
Thanks, Legend.